Hey, it's your double C in 2023. What do the two C's stand for? I am your colored cowboy. Welcome, homies and homettes. Welcome to another edition of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about home buyer sentiment has rose recently, the first time in over a year. I'm going to debunk that. I think that's a dead cat bounce. I'm going to explain to you exactly what that technical term means. And at the end of the video, we're going to talk about some layoff information specifically to the tech industry and how I think eventually that's going to spill over into the general economy. So once again, welcome to my show. New look here. Hey, you gotta spice it up a little bit. So if you're enjoying this content, or if you're shocked or you're laughing right now, take a pause for the cause, smash that like button, share this video, and comment because you know I care. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this article, but I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I've extracted some of the information from the article and put it in a slide. I think it's more easier on the eye and the information flows a little bit better. So we're going to try a different format today. So I do encourage you to comment below to let me know what you think about the hat with the complexion for the connection. Urban cowboy, baby, look out. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. So let me see if I can switch this over the right way. There we go. And once again, this article is from CNBC. It talks about home buyers sentiment. I think this is basically, like I said, a dead cat bounce. This article was written January 18th of this year. So like I said, this home buyer sentiment, I think, is a dead cat bounce. It is a false positive. So what do I mean by a false positive? For those of you who are TV junkies, you ever see the, I think it's called the Maury Povich Show. And they're like, hey, Leroy. Hey, Kevin, you are not the father. Like, I got 99 problems, but that ain't one, right? So that's basically what it is. It's a false positive. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to give you a visual of explaining what a dead cat bounce is, compliments of Speed Trader here. So here is the setup for a dead cat bounce. Price reacts to news and swiftly moves along trends. So this is basically what they're saying in a pattern. It's not really going up and it's not really going down much. And then you get a sharp decline. I do like cats, so please don't start trolling me. This is just a term that they use in industry. And then you get a sharp decline here. And here is where the dead cat bounce comes into play. It comes up to a false positive. So it starts to come up about 50% of the way to where it dropped from. You see here, you come all the way down, it comes up halfway. Ultimately to what? It was already dead on arrival, but you don't know that. You think that this thing is leading to a more positive trend. This is what's happening with this home buyer sentiment, that people are thinking that, oh, well, see, I told you, home prices are getting ready to rebound in 2023, and things are off to the races because of the home builders' confidence. This is a classic, in my humble opinion, dead cat bounce. So as you can see here, it goes up, it was already dead, and then it just rolls back down. And then at this point, as the visual says, then a further movement in the direction of the original trend, which was down. And typically when it starts to roll over from a dead cat bounce analogy or technical analysis, it will go down further than it did when it dropped here. So that's just a quick definition for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term. I think it's apropos to the home buyers' recent sentiment. So the next part, we're going to talk about key points that I extracted from that article. Sentiment rose 4 points, to 35 on the National Association of Home Builders Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. Okay, keep that in mind because the benchmark for this index is 50. Anything below 50 is really negative, but they're basically getting excited because it rose 4 points to 35, right? While National Association Home Builders is forecasting a decline for single-family starts this year compared to 2022, it appears a turning point for housing lies ahead. What? So let me get this straight. We're still light years away from the 50 baseline point for this index, or this housing market index, but because it went from, it's up 4 points, it's up to 35, you think that's a turnaround. Let me give you guys another analogy. That's like saying, hey, I just want to let you know your son is doing much better in math. He went from 50% to 54%, but he's still failing. You cannot make this stuff up. So here's the next thing. Let's look at this from a big picture standpoint. Sentiment rose 4 points, like I said, up to 35 based on that index, right? And as I told you guys, anything below 50 is considered negative sentiment. Check this out. The matrix stood at 83 just a year ago. So we are significantly off 2022 compared to January of 2023, but we're supposed to believe this false narrative that this index is putting out because it rose from it went up 4 points to 35. You got to sit back and look at the big picture. You're going to see little dips in volatility and housing, but clearly in aggregate, this thing is going down, and it's going down at a rapid pace. So here's the next excerpt that a message that they were sending to the reader, and that's why the title of this slide is called Contradiction, Bullish, Viewpoint. So let's jump into this real quickly. It appears the low point for builder sentiment in this cycle was registered in December, just last month, folks. Even as many builders continue to use a variety of incentives, including price reductions, to bolster sales. Okay, this is what Jerry's saying, right? The chairman of the home builders from Savannah, Georgia. Check this out. The rise in builder sentiment also means that cycle lows for permits and starts are likely near, and a rebound for the home building could be underway in the later part of 2023. So on one hand, he's saying that it appears that there's low points for builder sentiment. But then he's saying, on the other hand, well, by the latter part of 2023, you're going to start to see home building rebound. Really? We're in a recession. Even though they haven't called it a recession, we're already in a recession. But hey, once again, this is what I'm saying, folks. You got to look underneath the hood to see what the condition of the engine's in. You can't just listen to these articles, because if you've got a preconceived notion in your mind that you're bullish on housing in 2023, you read something like this and not really go into a deep dive on it and just gloss over something like this. Is clearly contradictory in nature. So let's go ahead and jump on to the next slide. I titled this slide, It's About Debt More So Than Rates. Once again, the National Association of Home Builders is forecasting a decline for single family starts compared to 2022. There's a contradictory term. This is a decline, but it's supposed to get better later this year during a recession and during massive layoffs. But I digressed. It appears a turning point for housing lies ahead. And this is what Robert thinks. In the coming quarters, single family building will rise off cycle lows as mortgage rates are expected to trend lower and boost housing for years. When I was telling people who are a lot smarter than me, who have a lot more real estate, you're missing the boat. This is about consumer debt and income. I don't care about interest rates. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video to show you that lower interest rates will not save this housing market, just like it didn't in 2008. But when people are feeling tapped out because they're getting squeezed, because their wages are not keeping up with inflation, okay, their buyers' confidence is at an all-time low. People aren't optimistic about the economy. It doesn't matter what mortgage rates are. People won't be in a position from a confidence standpoint to go out and says, you know what, honey, let's go out, even though I know my job is in peril, and go out and get a house and put ourselves on a 30-year debt instrument. People are not going to do that. So I think they're focusing on the wrong thing. Yes, mortgage rates will spark mortgage activity in the area of those people who are saddled with debt who need to refinance. Okay, you will see more, but I'm curious to see if you get an explosion in purchase applications and seeing that stuff through. That is where the devil is in the detail. So more about refinancing than purchases, and that's what I just talked about, a measure of mortgage applications to purchase a home. Did rise sharply last week, according to the Mortgage Brokers Association. Unfortunately, The number of new listings on the market is down from a year ago. And this is what I'm talking about. Mortgage rates are only one component. When people don't feel confident about their jobs and they don't like the way inflation and everything else that's basically a headwind for the average consumer that's just struggling to make ends meet, they're just not going to participate in the housing market. Here is an interesting visual, and I got this from Reventure Consulting. House payment to income ratio. So basically, this is a fancy graph that's telling you guys, hey, look, what is a good income in relationship to what's affordable for a house? It deals with the cost of the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and divided by the median income, right? So as housing prices go up, even though we had low interest rates prior to last year, you get to a point where the income just can't sustain that mortgage payment. So something has to break. As you can see here in 2022, we are much higher than where we were back in 2026. This yellow dotted horizontal line here shows a trend that goes back to 1997. This says there's an average of 30.2%. That's pretty much, historically speaking, the sweet spot where house payment and income ratio is at a good spot, where people have enough income to afford house. The housing market is basically healthy from a fundamental standpoint and has not been artificially pushed out of mainstream price range because of stimulus packages within the last 24 months. So as you can see here, it went down a little bit during the last great financial recession, and it stayed down for a little bit. And then right when we got toward the virus here, it shot up. Home prices shot up, payments have shot up. And as you can see, this is what they call the double top. This is starting to roll over. So what's probably going to happen, home payments in relationships to income, based on this graph, is going to have to come way down here to this medium of 30.2% in order for people to be able to afford the average home price. And in order for affordability to be in line with home prices, in my humble opinion, have to come down significantly in aggregate. Once again, there are always going to be exceptions to the rules, but in aggregate, you will see a significant pullback in 2023 and beyond. And finally, last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and give you this graph. This might be hard to read, but this is the federal funds effective rate. And basically what I want to show you right here, this is during the last, where my cursor is right here. This is the beginning of the great financial crisis. What happened is that the federal funds effective rate went down. They cut the rate down to zero. Keep in mind, I've said this before in other videos, ladies and gentlemen, but keep in mind when they did that, if you were around when the federal funds rate got cut to zero, and here's my point, it did not save the housing market. The housing market in aggregate did not peel up to around 2012. So even though the Fed and the bond market is screaming that the Fed's going to have to pivot sometime in 2023, probably around the second quarter, around May or June of 2023, somewhere around in that time period, and rates will probably come down, inflation will still be an issue, you will see unemployment tick up, we will definitely be in a recession, and the current administration will have to acknowledge that. And due to massive layoffs, buyers and consumer confidence will continue to drop. And as a result of that, you will not see people who are participating in the real estate market on a large scale. And here's the example of that back then. So just an interesting article. A couple of things I wanted to go over here when I said something about some tech jobs. Just bear with me here a second. Layoffs in the tech industry. 13% of tech jobs with Facebook, aka Meta, 10% of Salesforce, 6% of Alphabet, aka Google. Microsoft has laid off 5% of its workforce, and Amazon has laid off 1%. And in my humble opinion, this is the first round of layoffs with many layoffs to come. There was a recent news article that came out and said existing home sales fell for 11 consecutive months in December. That has been the slowest pace since 2010, in 12 years. What was going on in 2010? We were dealing with the great financial crisis. The last little bit of news I wanted to share with you guys is that active building, I was talking about, this whole video is talking about builder sentiment. There's about 785,000 homes that are actively in construction. Wait till all of that hits the housing market. That's going to further increase inventory. That is my humble opinion. So I'm going to end this video with my slogan. You know how I do it. Keep your credit score up and keep your debt down. Y'all come back now, you hear?